That's true.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday for Calaveras County. At this point, is there any public comment? Seeing no public comment, Madam Clerk.
Item 1 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Any public comment on that? No public comment, Madam Clerk.
Item 2 is public employee performance evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, title, Public Works Director.
Public comment on item 2 on the closed session agenda? Seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session. Good morning, everyone. Sorry we had our little delay on our closed session, but welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Calaveras County. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Madam Clerk.
So the report of closed session, item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. And item 2, public employee performance evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, title, Public Works Director. Both of these items are incomplete, and the board will be recessing for lunch at 12 o'clock until 1 o'clock, and then reconvening to close session from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock today.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking any action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Thank you.
I have to wait.
Ladies and gentlemen, during public comment, please keep in mind that we have a new time system here. If you're unfamiliar with it, we'll give you a chance to experience it.
You owe me 2 seconds now. How you doing? You know, I woke up this morning and I had no intention of being here, but I kept on saying, and it wasn't really aimed at you. I hate you, I hate you, I hate. It's like a mantra in my head. And it wasn't aimed at you. It was aimed at what's going on over in the Planning Commission regarding the Dollar General store. And as you may know, the Dollar General store has been held up several times, and they've taken an extra step, an extraordinary step, in allowing the public to have comments on that when they really shouldn't have. It's going to, if somebody played it right, it would tie up the whole system. They've been, those people that oppose the Dollar General store have been acting unhonorably. They haven't been behaving by the norms of our society and what we and the way we behave when it comes to giving people a chance to do what they need to do. So that's what my my angst was all about. And I'm not going to attend that meeting tomorrow because I just don't like those people. They completely turned me off. They've been holding things up in this county for far too long. They've been throwing they come up to a place like West Point and throw their 2 cents in when they really shouldn't. They should let the community speak. They put out a petition that was false and misleading, and the Planning Commission might take that into consideration. I will not attend that meeting, just as a matter of principle, but also they just turn my stomach, those kind of people. I get a lot of requests to be involved in a variety of things. So I brought this with me. It's proof that I don't live in I don't vote in Calaveras County. You don't have to listen to me, ever. you really don't. You know, my emails. I was telling your tax collector today. She said, "You mean you just send those and then you turn off your computer?" Yeah, I do. It's when something's bothering me that I just send those and turn off my computer. I think you're heading in the wrong direction on many things. And you can continue down that path, or you can finally just stand up and say, we've had enough. Our constituents had enough, and we want to move forward. 28 seconds, that light just threw me off. So, you know, even the cadence of Timothy Lutz's speech, you shouldn't do that. You should talk more normally. It doesn't really bother me that much. I get the real thing. I get the real thing all the time, so that doesn't bother me. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, there's supposed to be 5 people in the aisle only.
Oh, wait, I had 2 extra seconds. Can we make?
So after the 5 people, the others should be outside or sitting. Please.
Before we start, are we being heard out in the foyer? Is there people out in the foyer? No. Is the PA system on out there? There's no people out there? Is the PA system on?
I don't hear anything.
Thank you. How many people used eye protection? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay. My name is Lynn Brown. I'm a parent up in West Point, and my children go to West Point Elementary. And I'm here to talk about how the Calaveras Unified School District is in crisis. Parents just went on strike last week in Valley Springs because our students are in overcrowded and chaotic classrooms. Our teachers are some of the lowest paid in the state. We can't hire and retain qualified teachers. The district projects shortfalls in the budget in the coming years, and if something doesn't happen, I know there's going to be talk of closing schools again. 3 years ago, the district was also in crisis and discussed closing our upcountry schools and cutting programs such as music and sports at the high school. The school board then agreed to a 3-year moratorium against talking about school closures, but we are now in our 3rd year, and it's not looking good. We're losing quality families to homeschool programs and schools in other counties. If we don't get help, there'll be many more parents coming and demanding assistance for our schools. Because of the financial strain, there's division among everyone. Our schools, administration, teachers, when really we all want to support our students and be unified. I know you can't fix all the problems, and I know school funding is complicated, but I'm sure we can figure something out. Mark Campbell, the superintendent, stated that he would need somewhere between $432,000 to $576,000 to hire 4 to 6 new teachers to help lower class sizes in grades TK through 3rd. I know the teachers union in the district have been in negotiations, but they are at an impasse, and I don't know what those numbers are. But I do know that this county just took in $7.2 million in new tax revenue, which we know is only half for the year. The majority of that money, probably at least over 80%, came from districts 1, 2, and 5, whose students attend Calaveras Unified. These taxes can help our schools. You just need to allow it. I'm asking that we and that you look into creative ways of helping our school district.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Bill McManus from the Bank Committee. As these documents come around, I'm just going to do kind of a summary of what is more explicitly laid out in the documents. During the recent Operation Terminus, it was reported that some 30 marijuana grows were raided and/or abated. Among the items found during these raids were marijuana plants, processed marijuana, firearms, body armor, opium pods, cash, etc. Most troubling was the number of environmental citations that were issued by various agencies. It was reported that 157 citations were issued. It is clear that besides crime, gunshots, noise generators, odor, barking guard dogs, and other nuisances the residents have to contend with, they are also under assault with chemical and other biohazard contaminants. Raw sewage waste was being released in the stream beds, and open and spilling containers of chemicals were identified. Besides the normal terror that residents experience from nearby pot grows, the environmental aspect does not necessarily go away even if the pot grow goes away. Whether in RR zones or any other zones, the hazards of pollution sources commonly found in pot grows, both applicant and non-applicant, present a clear and present danger that may be odorless, colorless, or otherwise undetectable. The migration of these hazardous contaminants from the source property into, onto, or over adjoining or nearby properties is a major concern for residents. Even knowing that multiple citations have been issued on problem properties does not provide residents with enough information for them to take precautionary measures. Couple that with potential infiltration into local aquifers and the specter of silent and deadly pollutants affecting broad areas of our rural county becomes a very major issue and a problem for the board to contend with. Of course, the downstream, downhill, downwind migrations of these dangerous compounds and chemicals presents a huge potential liability for the county. How many lawyers and how much money could East Bay Mud, Oakdale Irrigation, and Stockton East bring to bear on our county if their water supplies are contaminated? Simply removing grows from RR neighborhoods will not eliminate or lessen the impact of contamination to other properties. In fact, it may make the problem worse by concentrating more grows on larger lots with no regard to how it's zoned. Please pass a comprehensive ban on all commercial cultivation of marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Vicki Reinke. I'm speaking on behalf of the Calaveras County Republican Central Committee. The committee passed a resolution to oppose Senate Bill 54. A copy of the resolution was emailed to you yesterday, but I know it might have been you might have been busy and not have read it, so I'm sending you a copy now with a letter attached. SB 54 proposes to repeal an existing provision of state law that requires local law enforcement agencies to notify federal immigration authorities when they have reason to believe that a person arrested or detained may not be a United States citizen. Such repeal would essentially tie our sheriff's hands and prevent him from detaining for transfer to immigration officials those undocumented aliens in local custody who are arrested for violations of the law. SB 54 would prohibit law enforcement from doing the following, and this is just a partial list, there's a lot more in the law. U.S. urgent agency or department monies, facilities, property, equipment, or personnel to investigate, interrogate, detain, detect, or arrest persons for immigration enforcement purposes, including but not limited to doing any of the following. Again, a partial list here. Inquiring into an individual's immigration status, detaining an individual on the basis of a hold request from federal immigration authorities, providing personal information about an individual, a person's release date, access to an interview of an individual to the federal immigration authorities, making a department database to document immigration status. Those things would be prohibited under SB 54. And that was just to name a few of the items. We believe that the proposed restrictions on the sheriff's cooperation with federal immigration officials would endanger the safety of our residents and essentially turn California into a sanctuary state and Calaveras County into a sanctuary county. We ask that you consider putting together your own resolution to oppose SB 54 to be presented at your next board meeting for discussion and a vote. And thank you for your consideration on this important issue. We need to support our law enforcement so they can do the job that the citizens expect of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony Worster, McCollum Hill. I'm speaking here. Hi.
I want you to speak in the mic, but thanks.
Oh, you guys can't hear it.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm speaking here today on my as a private citizen, not from any group, and I would like you to please consider my request. I'd like you to read Senate Bill 54. If you haven't read it already, please read it. After you read it, or if you've already read it, please talk to our sheriff. Ask him, how will this impact your job of protecting us citizens? We have a good sheriff. He actually comes out to Moke Hill, to Shutter Tree Park, and talks to us when we had a little crime wave for a while, and there were a few break-ins, and tools were stolen from yards and stuff like that. He actually came out with a couple of deputies, and he's really a great guy. I mean, he really tries hard to protect all of us and take care of us and keep us informed. And I would just really hate to see Senate Bill 54 go through and have that actually decrease the amount of safety that he can provide for us. So this is my recommended reading for you guys. In case you haven't read it, please read Senate Bill 54. And if you agree with me and you agree with our sheriff that he should be able to do his job the best way he knows how, please protest. Let the governor know, just in case the assembly passes it, because it has crossed from the Senate to the assembly, please let the governor know it's not in the best interest of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Brock Estes from Valley Springs. Again, just trying to give you information that you may need, you may already know, as you move towards what probably is going to be a contentious 3-2 vote, possibly in favor of a ban on cannabis. I just want you to have as much information as you can. I'm going to try and cover 3 points. Number one, I have an ongoing public records request, and I'm emailing fairly regularly with the attorney it was turned over to at the state, whose last name is hyphenated, Reese Cronin. I began by asking for any regulations they had formulated or were in the process of formulating, which would give counties direction as to what they can do regarding the Prop 64 language that says that counties shall regulate cannabis. He continues to tell me he has no documents responsive to my request. That is, they got nothing, and it looks like it's up to each county to make their own rules. Along those lines, you may or may not know, in Monterey County, Salinas particularly, it used to be the capital of cut flowers. Now there is not one rose or chrysanthemum grower left. And the reason is back in the 90s, we decided to get Colombia to move away from growing coca leaves and cocaine, and we urged them to go into cut flowers. We gave them great tariff rates. They have a low wage rate, and they have put all of our companies completely out of business. So what Monterey County decided to do is to enact a law that says that only existing greenhouses may be used to grow commercial marijuana in that county. Now that does two things. One, it gives a use to those greenhouses which are now just melting away into the ground. It also makes the former flower growers somewhat whole in that they can use their land. And it also tells them exactly where marijuana will be grown, because you can only grow them in existing greenhouses. This tells me that counties have a lot of power to regulate. And I urge you to think outside the box, because there are ways to come to a 5-0 vote that would benefit everyone and leave everyone a little bit unhappy and a little bit happy, rather than contentious 3-2 vote. Lastly, I only have a few seconds left to tell you that I drive a cab when I'm in San Francisco, and I was for the last couple of weeks, and I meet people, and I happened to meet a young couple from Humboldt County, so I asked them how it's going up there. He said, absolute chaos. They have 8,800 requests for permit to grows, more than they could ever inspect. The price has dropped from $2,000 a pound to $1,000 a pound, and I had one of our growers here today tell me $500 a pound. So this is a volatile industry.
Thank you.
Good morning. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Today I'm going to talk about words that start with D. I'm going to start with dementia. I have dementia. My grandma had it, my mom had it, and I'm aware that I have it. And I believe once you hit 50, pretty much a lot of people start suffering from dementia, whether they want to admit it or not. So I looked in my dictionary for definitions of dementia, and I got into some behaviors. First, we deal with denial. I think we all know what denial is. I don't have it. It's not me. You're crazy. Then we have deflection, which is focusing away from you, and it is pointing the finger somewhere else. We know a lot of people that do that. Then we have defensiveness. Sometimes that's exhibited with anger. Those are three categories of behavior that bring us to a place where I call the dead zone, which is you become disconnected. You become disconnected from what's going on, and the people around you also. Then we get into a more serious area where we change personalities. We become somebody else. We become delusional. That is, we believe in something despite evidence to the contrary. We become deranged, which is unhinged and reactive. Finally, full-blown dementia, which is insanity and madness. Then we get to a safe zone, where it doesn't matter how we behave because everything is acceptable because now we are crazy. Some of these other behaviors include impulsiveness, obsessiveness, and paranoia. My last D word for today is the Donald. I believe he has dementia. He's 70 years old, as I am, and there's certain behaviors I identify. The way he repeats phrases, not to make an impact, that's to give his brain a chance to catch up with what his mouth has said. I do that. Finally, I diagnose him from my armchair psychologist position as a man with dementia who is obviously ODing on Viagra. He has too much meanness, too much aggression to define himself as an elderly gentleman. We know men become more subdued in their older age, and women become more assertive and aggressive. That's just nature. That's the way it goes. Thank you.
Jack.
Morning, Board. Mark Whitehead from Valley Springs. I just wanted to concur with several statements about SB 54 made by Vicki Reinke. In March of this year, I provided all of the Board of Supervisors members with information from the Ohio Jobs and Justice PAC and from the Federation for American Immigration Reform website that's relating to the sanctuary status of entities throughout this country. I followed it with phone calls and discussions of the topic, asking for support for the idea of non-sanctuary county status. I gave each board member a sample resolution and declaration that should be adopted to address this issue, and I asked for board support. Supervisor Oliveira and I had a conversation, and he, having been in law enforcement, I'm certain that he is aware acutely of the far-reaching effects of undocumented status to a public entity. The oligarchy in Sacramento has declared by virtue of SB 4 in 2013 that law enforcement was discouraged from supporting federal immigration activity and laws. This legislation apparently didn't have enough teeth required to oppose U.S. immigration policy, so the same oligarchy is in the process of enacting SB 54, essentially declaring the entire state a sanctuary on the basis of immigration status. This legislation is a bucket of negative law that prohibits law enforcement from interacting with immigration control and enforcement agencies in certain ways, and creates more bureaucracy for the state and for the county. We're at a critical phase now, since it's been 5 months since March has allowed the legislators in Sacramento to push SB 54 nearly to the point of the governor's signature. Checking this morning on the website, it's passed the Senate and it's in its second revision state with the Assembly. Once passed, it'll essentially impose restrictions and doubtless penalties, which we don't know anything about, against those entities that don't want to go along and play the game. Once passed, we know that it will essentially negate law enforcement's ability to do its job in this county. We know that illegal immigration has had an effect on crime in this county. If no further evidence was necessary, we'd simply have to recall all cannabis enforcement that's occurred at the old Calaveras Airport and the arrest of at least 30 undocumented workers. More recently, other cannabis busts have involved. Thank you.
Good morning, Bill Wilson, District 1. Good to see you all back here today. I might remind the board that all of those people that were involved in Terminus were eradicated by the Sheriff's Department because this year he could get help. Was that financial help from taxes, from Measure C? Or was that just other government agencies didn't want to come to Calaveras County to eradicate marijuana last year? This year, we've eradicated 23. Sheriff's been in the paper for more things than just cannabis eradication. We have county officials accusing other county officials of doing wrong things, spending money that they shouldn't have spent on certain things. Shame, shame, shame. Regulation. Not one of those eradications was a regulated grow that's been licensed or permitted by this county that has paid taxes to this county. We have school teachers that are underpaid, sheriffs that are underpaid. We have deputies that we can't fill positions for because we don't pay. But we have $11 million. Only half of that was paid this year by this time. We're still collecting that money, aren't we? Aren't we still taking in money from that? Because we couldn't even get all the people in that wanted to pay those taxes. Better rate than people in this county pay the IRS have paid those marijuana taxes. by gosh, you guys that want to ban this stuff and create more illegal grows, I do not understand you, gentlemen. I just don't. It just befuddles me why we would take something we can make money on, make it legitimate, and get rid of the garbage that we've got in this county that is doing it illegally with funds paid by the legal ones. Just astounds me why you want to do that. You want to cut off $11 million from your budget. You can't spend $11 million on schools, on police, on fire, roads. Come on, gentlemen, give me a break. This ban is malarkey. I would have used a different term, but that's the best I can get away with in here. Anyway, thank you. I hope you realize you need to regulate and not ban. I don't know why you want to.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to comment on the dementia, repeating yourself. Maybe the mind is racing ahead instead of trying to keep up. I have this problem. I start talking and I lose my train of thought because my mind took off someplace. I'm 72, and I think I've had dementia all my life. And I'm not kidding. If it's not dementia, it's probably some kind of aberration. I do believe this SB 54 is wrong. I think that the police need all the help they can get, and that's not going to do it. I think because we recognize medical marijuana, the feds won't help us with the eradication as much as they otherwise would. And I spoke against medical marijuana when they decided to do it in public comment in Angels Camp. Another issue is the exodus of school children from our schools. That means that the schools do not get a lot of money because every day the kid goes to school, the school district gets money. And when you have them go someplace else, then you don't have that money. And I can bet you that the administration has not taken any pay cuts, even though they've lost population. A school superintendent wrote in an article a couple of months ago about the loss of student population and repercussions to the school district, cuts to class sizes because of resulting budget cuts. I believe that a society who does not care for their children is a sterile society without them. I believe, from what I've heard, that the price of housing is going up, hard for people to compete that aren't growing and selling drugs, to include marijuana. Years ago, Florida was having this same problem, and people would just go buy houses, pay cash for them, and high amounts. And it caused a very difficult situation for the rest of the population that were not into drug trafficking. Marijuana takes away inhibitions like going into public reeking. I've heard of a number of proprietors commenting on this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our 30-minute limit. Ms. Crane will be the last speaker for public speaking. Oh, 2? Is there any other public speakers? Then we'll have 2. If you'll stand up and let me see if you're going to be speaking, we may have to continue this after our regular agenda. We will be continuing that after our regular agenda then. Ms. Crane, will you be the last speaker on this session? Would you like to defer to Mr. Krovis?
I think I should, but I really want to leave us all on a positive note, but
All right.
I thought you said we could do two.
You two want to flip a coin?
I want us to do two, not just one.
Okay.
Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. Brief announcement. We are having a residential hazardous waste and tire collection event here in San Andreas, Saturday, September the 9th from 9 to 1. So we'll take all of your household hazardous waste as well as tires. It's a limit to 15 gallons of liquid combined, 5 gallons per container, 125 pounds max, or 9 tires maximum. But this is a free event. However, you must bring your ID. ID would be a driver's license that shows an address in the county. It would be a tax bill that shows an address in the county with your name on it. And then you've got that. In addition, on the same day, we will be having hazardous waste collection events in the Arnold yard, the road yard up in Arnold. And we'll also have a household hazardous event at the Caltrans yard up in West Point. So that's it. And just to make another quick, brief announcement, we have filled a position of our business administrator. We filled a new position for a public works inspector, and I have filled an administrative assistant and my recycling coordinator out at solid waste, and then received a resignation from one. So 4 steps forward, 1 step sideways. Welcome to Public Works. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Clovis. Madam Clerk, have we reached our 30-minute time limit? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue public speaking at the end of the regular agenda. Madam Clerk?
I'm getting there. Consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, is there any member of the public that wishes to pull any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and staff. Is there any item on the consent agenda that the board or staff wishes to pull?
16.
16 by Supervisor Clapp.
And 12.
And 12 by Supervisor Mills. Any further supervisor or staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the balance of the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp, seconded by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment?
No. It was by Supervisor Mills, second.
Oh, okay, by Supervisor Mills. I stand corrected. No further public comment. I'll bring it back. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Supervisor Mills, item 12.
Yes, Chair. Referring to page
Excuse me.
169.
I'm sorry.
My apologies.
Item 12 is from the Planning Department. Authorize the Planning Department to issue a partial refund of $5,091.02 for 2016-286 Spark zoning amendment for withdrawal of project pursuant to County Code Section 17.88.021B.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I apologize.
Supervisor Mills, could you speak into the mic?
The mic wasn't on. It's now on. Thank you. My apologies, Madam Clerk, as well. Referring to the board agenda packet, page 169, this is the refund authorization form that is used, and it delineates the departments to which each one of those amounts would be recovered from, specifically speaking to County Fire. I do know some background on County Fire. They were involved in doing the inspections for the fire districts regarding zoning or planning changes, but I know that after Ms. Scheller stopped doing that and she departed the county, It has been left to the individual districts to deal with that particular issue, and they have done so. I don't know whether those districts are recovering those costs or whether this is ending up in a specific line item and account somewhere, or what that money is being used for. So it's just, one of those things that, knowing the history, I think it's important for us to figure out, is the money going to the districts then to do these reviews, or is the money being left in an account somewhere, and to what purpose is it being used in the future? I know I've spoke briefly with the CAO about this, and I expect that he will follow up and provide us an answer. With that, I would move this item for approval.
Comments before we seek a second? Seeing none, I'll entertain a second for the motion by Supervisor Mills, seconded by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 5-0 unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 16 is from Public Works to authorize a refund of commercial road impact mitigation fees and Valley Springs benefit basin fees in the amount of $18,180 to Brian Mansfield.
Supervisor Clapp.
Yeah, my concern on this is that we have a 4,000-foot building there, and I want to know if the zoning is just for storage, or was it actually zoned for something else? So I'd like to know what the zoning on that was.
I believe Mr. Maurer just exited the chambers.
Because part of my concern would be that if it's, once we let the building in, and if it's zoned for office space, then the next person buying the building, or when it's passed on, they're going to have an office there instead of storage. So the zoning would be a concern of mine, giving back the RIM fees when actually it could later on affect the Valley Springs Basin. We have a real bad habit of giving money back, and I have a subdivision there that we let them put the shopping center in with just a $50,000 bond, which will not even touch the off-street improvements that we're stuck with now.
Thank you, Supervisor Clapp. Were we able to contact Mr. Maurer? Madam Clerk, could we call over and have Mr. Maurer return with that information, and we'll table this issue until he returns? Okay. This issue will be tabled until the return of Mr. Maurer. Madam Clerk.
Item 19 is from the Administrative Office to receive a presentation from Common Ground Senior Services on the services the organization provides to the residents of Calaveras County.
And I'll just note, again, I had a prior conversation with Common Grounds who had discussed wanting an opportunity to talk to the board about services they've been providing. My understanding, as I've pieced together history, last year we provided an augmentation of funds to Common Grounds, and where I felt this was a prudent discussion was whether, as we're entering final budget, the board wished to consider such an augmentation, and part of that discussion would be allowing Common Grounds to kind of give an overview of some of the services that they're providing to the community, and answer board questions. I did ask that we have a brief presentation at 15 minutes, so I appreciate your compliance on that.
Thank you, CEO.
Elizabeth. Good morning. Elizabeth Thompson, Executive Director of Common Ground Senior Services, and thank you for this opportunity to address you guys. I know it's just the beginning of the fiscal year, but that's when we find out what's going to be happening for the rest of the fiscal year. So these, as you may know, the services that we provide, but the two real big vital services that we provide in this county is transportation and Meals on Wheels, or home delivered meals. So my presentation today is just as a service provider to just give you the insights of what I see our community, what I see our agency sees in our community as far as the needs of our seniors and those that are disabled. We addressed you in March when we received that augmentation that Mr. Lutz had referred to. I think it was $25,000 and $15,000 was for Meals on Wheels, and $15,000, $10,000 was for Meals on Wheels, and $5,000 for the transportation program. And in March, I just want to again repeat just a few things about the Meals on Wheels program. Currently, we have 135 clients who are receiving meals. These are more than just a meal, these meals that we provide to our seniors. As important as these meals are, they are because of their daily requirements, the 1/3 daily requirements that we provide with these meals, but it's also the relationships that we have with these clients in ascertaining their needs in order to help them to remain independent and live in their home comfortably where they want to live in their homes and not be institutionalized. Our drivers are perhaps sometimes the only people that they see on a regular basis, weekly basis. Many of our clients have family members that are not in the area. And so it's really important that our delivery drivers have that relationship with them so they can bring back to us, what they see. We're all mandated reporters, and then this way we can assist them. We ascertain their needs by going out on a quarterly basis to do home assessments, reassessments, and regular home assessments. We refer some of these needs to other agencies in the community and to the Area 12 Agency on Aging as far as, the types of programs that they might have, or we ascertain what those programs are that might assist them. So it's important that these Meals on Wheels continue in our community. Last year, this is July 1st, was the beginning of the fiscal year, but last year we did over 39,000 meals, and this is just Amador County, to 254 clients. I pulled some numbers yesterday, and I saw that, low income and lives alone, so those clients that are low income and lives alone, there's 92 of those 254, which is 36% of the people that we serve. The low income total, this is including those that live alone and those who have a spouse, 64% are low income. I think these are very telling numbers of why our seniors need the assistance they do. And I have taken the opportunity in the last 2 weeks to actually drive these routes and deliver these meals to our seniors. I went to the West Point area, McCullough Hill, West Point, Railroad Flat, Wilseyville area 3 times. And, it's a 6 to 7 hour drive in order to deliver these meals. But I was able to spend just a couple minutes with them to ask them how these meals are. They're frozen meals. They're not like, homemade meals. That's true. But they do have all the ingredients or the nutritional value. There probably are some clients that I saw that maybe do not necessarily need Meals on Wheels because they can probably afford it. However, will they cook for themselves? Probably not. They don't. I mean, as you get older, and I know as I get older, I don't want to cook. So, cereal in the morning and cereal at night might be exactly what most of them do. So these meals are really good, and they enjoy it. Whether it's only a frozen meal daily, they do enjoy it. But what I've heard is that they also don't have enough money. They're on fixed income. They live out in these areas because that's the only place they can live. They can't move into the city limits because of the price of housing. And granted, we don't have any senior living facilities we need more, let's put it that way. Many of them live in trailer homes. And so, there was one area in Railroad Flat, can't remember the area, but it's sad. I think you need to go, each one of you, and I would be happy to go with you personally and ride along these routes to see just what the needs of our seniors are. we are serving the most needy. And again, it's heart-wrenching sometimes to go out there and see that, especially in light of the cuts and the grants that are coming down and the costs to provide these meals. It's hard to figure out who it is that needs to come out, because that was one of my visits. One of the reasons why I wanted to go out and see that is because I need to start in the back of my mind prioritizing who gets the meals. You know, if they're 80 and over, they've got to have 3 or 4 criteria that makes them eligible. I've not really seen too many people out there that is not eligible in my mind, and so how do I tell them they're not eligible? It's going to have to come down, and it all comes down to funding, unfortunately. Our seniors, I hear that our seniors, definitely are fixed income, and then just having these meals helps them month to month, so that they can pay for their medication, they can pay for doctor's appointments, and so forth. So, they're beautiful. The seniors out there are beautiful. I just love each one of them, and they're so grateful, and their heart is so wanting to be in this county. They do not want to leave this county. They want to live, and they want to live in their homes. So I think as a individual and as a community and as a county, we all need to assist them in that, and to keep them safe in their homes and to live in the life that they want to live. So that's the Meals on Wheels program. Then I have a couple more thoughts and ideas, but 2 years ago we received a 5310 Caltrans grant, which we were able to receive 2 handicap vans and a small bus. And we have this program called the Silver Streak, and I've probably seen that. Silver Streak program is just the name of the names on the buses, but it's the transportation program that Common Ground provides. Currently, we have on Thursdays we go to Mather. We take up to 3 to 4 people at times to Mather on a Thursday. We're trying to go do group trips so that it's not just the socializations that the veterans get with each other, but also to minimize costs. So that's one of the programs that I've just expanded in the last couple years, and it's fun. It's fun for the for these vets to get together and talk to other vets. So I think that's well mentioning that it's a good thing. We want to go to, there's one in French Camp, and then we do go to Livermore as well. Palo Alto, we're kind of pushing back on that one because it's a bit too far. It takes up a lot of our resources. On the average, with our 3 vehicles, we average probably about 7,000 miles per month. And this is just the month of July. I was able to pull numbers. And a lot of these are for out-of-county specialists in Stockton, Lodi, Sacramento, Sonora, just outside of Calaveras County. And we did 125 trips in just the month of July to 35 older adults and those that are disabled. The grant that I had mentioned earlier from Caltrans, receiving these things, we did receive some operations, but the end of December, these operations funds are going to be gone. That operation funds paid for our full-time dispatcher and 1 part-time driver, but it's going to be gone at the end of December. Now this year, we did apply in March for the 5310 grant. Again, this is for specialized transportation for those who are disabled and seniors. And so we applied for a mobility management grant, and we applied for operations to run these vehicles. And we were awarded just last week the mobility management grant. So we're real thrilled about that. And what we're looking forward to is the collaboration and the partnering with Caltrans, Calaveras Transit to see a dial-a-ride. We do dial-a-ride already. That's the constituents that we do. So let's figure out how the county and Common Ground can work together with this dial-a-ride program. There's areas outside of West Point that I see that we don't go to very often. Well, we can possibly go there. We're already going there because we do have a lot of clients that are out in the West Point area that need transportation into the area. We have since talked to the police department in Angels Camp, and they're going to house one of our vans so that my driver who lives in Copperopolis is going to be able, and a couple volunteer drivers that live in Angels Camp can just go to the Angels Camp police station and pick up the van there and then drive in that vicinity. We have one parked down here, and then we have one right here in San Andreas. So that's how we make the money stretch, and we do need your assistance in doing that. So with that grant that I just mentioned that we got, the mobility management grant, like I said, we'll be partnering. I'm wanting to create a dial-a-ride, and I'm hoping to work with transit in doing that. We did not get funded for operations. Now, these grants can't be used for operations. They can't be used for salaries. They can't be used for fuel. They can't be used for insurance. They can't be used for anything except for what it's designated for. So we will be coming back later for you to consider helping us with this Silver Streak transport. And in the meantime, also working with these other entities to help fund this very, very vital program. I guess I'm almost done. So shopping is another one that we hear a lot. Again, they're on fixed incomes. They need to get to a place where it's affordable. Going to Treats or going over to the local store in Railroad Flat, or going to the local store in the other areas is just not feasible. Their dollars do not go a long way, and we need to help them make their dollars go a long way. So we are going to be looking at a transportation for shopping. I don't know when they get paid or Social Security comes in, but during that point in time, I'd like to be able to go to different mobile home sites, especially mobile home sites, pick seniors up for the day, take them. Again, socialization is important. Take them over to wherever they need to go shopping, then bring them back on a regular basis. But again, that takes funding. How do we keep older adults and disabled citizens in their homes? It's simple. By assisting with these two very vital programs, they do keep our seniors in their home. I can't stress how, if they were not for these two programs, that what these seniors will be doing. They'll be institutionalized, which costs us as taxpayers even greater amounts of dollars, but more importantly, the dignity, the courtesy that we owe them to stay in their homes, because that's where they want to be. And that's our goal, and that's our desire as an agency for our seniors that we see. It takes the county, it takes other agencies, churches, the community, and each one of us personally to make this happen. You ask how? By assuring that these programs stay funded, are funded. By volunteering 1 day a week to deliver meals, by volunteering 1 day a week to drive seniors to doctor's appointment, by donating to these programs. These dollars go a very long way. We all have a part in assuring our seniors live in peace, dignity, and in their comfort of their homes. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to Calaveras County for the support that we received this past year, those additional dollars, and in the last few years that Common Ground has been providing this service. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon, and I appreciate any ideas, thoughts, and more importantly, I really would like to have you come drive with me to some of these seniors and see where they live. I think it's important to see who we serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Elizabeth, we gave you a bus a few months ago, did we not? On the Silver Streak, I think.
Almost 3 years ago, we did receive with CDBG grant a bus. Yes, we did.
Because I think you just got parked by your building. I think I seen it just the other day.
The bus is definitely parked by the building, and it's used basically a lot of times for the big trips. We do some out-of-county trips. We do use it for the major trips as well. Again, a lot of the reason why you see it parked there is because the cost to operate that bus. So, as funding, we do have 3 handicap vans in the backside of our building that you probably have not seen. But that's what we utilize more, is those handicap buses, because they're more cost-effective, efficient. So.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for your work.
Thank you. Further questions presented by the board? At this point, I'll open up to public comment.
Thank you. Ben Stopper, District 5. These services that they provide for our senior citizens are much needed, as you're all aware. And these ladies not only aren't compensated for their full time, they volunteer a lot of their time to make sure these happen. These are working people that make it happen for these seniors that are not able to necessarily get things done for themselves. For example, over and above what they're required for is, the board chair might be well aware of, since he was on the board at the time of the Butte fire. These people came forward with a list of addresses to the county of people that weren't able to necessarily get out of harm's way on their own. In the great confusion that was the Butte fire, these people gave an avenue to the sheriff's department and other things. These are people that cannot get out on their own, and they provided the addresses, why these people couldn't get out, and they said, this is how you can help these people. And that's the type of people we need taking care of our seniors and looking after them. And they should be funded well so that they can continue the service that they provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Mr. Fry.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm George Fry. I'm the chair of the In-Home Supportive Services, and obviously I support Common Ground's program. In-Home Supportive Services, their main goal is to keep people in their homes, just like Common Ground does. And I just want to let the board know that I do support Common Ground, and anything that we can do for seniors I think is really outstanding. And I know when I look at you 5 board members that you all believe in supporting seniors, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Easy. Ms. Crane, you have a comment?
I would also like to applaud the Meals on Wheels portion of Common Ground Senior Services. Obviously, we all agree that that's something we have to have. Looking at our economic status in the county over the years, and especially now, which became abundantly clear during, if it wasn't already, during the 2-day strategic planning meeting that just happened a few days ago. I would be remiss if I didn't remind us all that in 1991, the community members took up the call to make sure that our seniors and our veterans and our fragile people, our vulnerable for whatever reason, got to the doctor, the post office, the grocery store, all these life-sustaining destinations. And they've been doing it at no cost to the taxpayer since 1991. And the program is still there, and we have never said no to anyone. We just either figure out a way to make it happen, find somebody else to do it, or to drive them, or we work with them to change their appointment so we can make a connection, but we have never said no. And I just want to, I just felt that I would be remiss if I didn't remind us all that we do have that, and we don't have to spend mega bucks paying for something when the community is eager to do it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Board. Trevor Whitke, Calaveras Cannabis Alliance. CCA has long supported Common Ground. We've made donations going back since CCA was CPR, Calaveras Patient Resources. It's been part of our mission to be part of the community and to support these sorts of endeavors. And moving forward, as our community continues to age, we have an average age of 50.5 years old. We are going to need these services more than ever. And as we continue moving forward in the direction that we're continuing to move down, we have some very serious considerations. about what kind of community do we want to be. Do we want to be a community that comes together, supports these types of endeavors, and does everything we can to support these endeavors, and does not try to obstruct, interfere, or stand in the way of community building? Or do we want to be a community that is divisive and sees in each other areas of antagonism and pitfalls as opposed to opportunities? I think that Common Grounds has actually created and sustained many of us throughout these years, the elderly and all of the individuals in our community who are of means and can give back. We have come together specifically for this purpose, and I think we should continue to do so. And I know CCA and myself will continue to support Common Grounds into the future, and we just hope that that also continues with every member of this board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Raymond Smith, Valley Springs. I'm also the lobbying director for Calaveras Normal. I'd like to relay my support for Common Grounds Senior Services and the funding that these seniors who are committed to our community, that we affirm our commitment to these seniors and fully support these services. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
I just wanted to say one last thing, and that's basically regarding the IHSS program. That's another program that is very vital to our community. Again, in my trip this last 2 weeks out to visiting our seniors, there are many seniors that receives IHSS services, and minimal hours, maybe 10, some of them, but even 10 is better than none. So I definitely support that program to be, in the forefront of what we do to help our seniors remain independent in their homes. Thank you, and I thank you for this opportunity, and I will be looking for future talks like this. It wasn't so much, I would get really nervous, but I'm okay now. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, let's go back to the consent agenda. Item 16, please. I see Mr. Mowers present.
So just to reiterate, we're looking at item 16. I show that as a public works item, the refund of commercial road.
I'm sorry, item 12. No,
item 12 was acted upon.
Yes, 16. The question was by Supervisor Clapp.
Yeah, the question was, I pulled 16, and it was brought by Public Works, but the question I had was to do with on the zoning.
Okay, so let me just reiterate what that is. Authorize a refund of commercial road impact mitigation fees and Valley Springs benefit basin fees in the amount of $18,180 to Brian Mansfield.
Correct.
And I understand the question was what the zoning of the property was?
What the zoning is now, because my understanding is that they're getting a refund because they're using the building for storage, and it's a different RIM fee and stuff on that. But so my concern is what the zoning is. If it's zoned for office, and they're going to use it for storage, then if they sell the property, then is it going to be sold as storage, or is it going to be an office, or what's going to happen at that point?
So it's zoned M1, light industrial, which would allow a storage facility there. My understanding with the RIM fee is that if there are permits that would be necessary to change something from, say, a storage facility to an office building, then that change in use would trigger a reassessment of the RIM fee if it created additional traffic.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would move to move that.
Okay.
I will second.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp, second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any more public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 5-0 unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a 15-minute break, and we will be returning. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a little short break for our staff. Madam Clerk.
Item 20 is from Human Resources to adopt a resolution consistent with the modified and extended contract with Service Employees International Union, Local 1021, ending December 31st, 2017, for appointed department heads, mid-management, professional, supervisory and confidential, and other.
Judy Hawkins, Human Resources and Risk Director. Good morning, Board. The resolution I'm bringing before you today is to adopt benefits that are consistent with the SEIU extended contract for our appointed officials, mid-management and professionals, supervisory confidential, and we have an other unit. And so they will be receiving the health care, the increased health care benefit, and then also some of the language changes within the MOU, such as the catastrophic leave that we expanded the language or defined the language on, and some of the other changes that was consistent with SEIU.
Ms. Hawkins, for purpose of clarification, I know that's noted supervisory / confidential. Who does that, is that the Board of Supervisors?
No, that is not the Board of Supervisors. I will be bringing that resolution before you on the 29th. That is for actual supervisors within a department. Okay. So that is hourly supervisors and not yourselves.
Thank you. Comments, questions by the Board? Seeing none, we'll open it to public comment.
Excuse me. Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. My question has to do, if I'm understanding it, this is dealing with improved benefits for a certain group of employees at the county level. Does this also include something like a COLA or an increase in wages or any of those things also?
Ms. Hawkins.
This does not address any increase in wages. It strictly is just the health care increase to the county contribution to health care, which is consistent with what SEIU, DSA, and SMU CCPSEA received. And so this is giving those same benefits to the unrepresented groups. There is no change in salaries.
Ms. Hawkins, once again, for purpose of clarification, the acronyms that you just spoke to, could you, for the purpose of our audience here in chambers and for TV, what those are?
So Sheriff's Management Unit, Deputy Sheriff's Association, Calaveras County Public Safety's Employees Association. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Tofinelli. Second by Supervisor Clapp and Mills. We'll let you two fight over it. No further public comment. I'll entertain the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam
Thank
Clerk.
you.
Item 21 is from Public Works to adopt a resolution establishing the fiscal year 2017-18 schedule of fees and land classification for property-related solid waste parcel fees.
Mr. Crowis.
Thank you. Jeff Crowitz, Public Works. This is a regular item. We've been coming back since 1990 annually to reestablish the solid waste parcel fee for every developed parcel in the county to help fund our integrated waste management system. We do this annually. This was established in 1991. It hasn't changed since then. The only thing that has changed is the distribution, how much of that total fee collected goes to diversion versus solid waste. We started with $140 going to solid waste and $10 going to diversion. It shifted a little bit more, but it still does not reflect what we actually divert versus what we landfill. That's basically it on this item. As I say, it's not a new fee, it's an established fee. It hasn't gone up. And we are hoping to, in the future, discuss if we need to raise it or change it.
Okay. Questions by the board of Mr. Krovis? Mr. Supervisor Topinol, your light's on. Any comment? I'm sorry. Oh, excellent. Seeing none, we'll open to public comment.
I've asked about this item before, and I'm not sure this is what we're talking about. This is the regular fee on the parcels for residences. My question is, they're saying they may come back with a modification of the fees of any sort. At the solid waste disposal centers right now, if you go to you load up your truck with a bunch of leaves and branches and stuff and you drive over there, you can unload it for, I think it's a minimal fee. If you take the time to put all this refuse, leaves and grass and weeds in separate containers and put them on the back of your truck, you get charged for each separate container. I loaded my truck up once and I had 13 little 5-gallon buckets on the back of my truck, and they wanted to charge me like $40. I went home and I dumped it back in the truck, and I went to the landfill and I got out and I got a rake in the mud, in the dirt, and it cost me like a tenth of what they wanted to charge me. I think there should be some attention paid to the way that they're forcing old people who can't really get out and rake stuff off of a truck, and actually somebody got out and helped me, as opposed to having little buckets that you can just stand and empty, and it's going to cost you a fortune. So if we're talking about modifying fees of any sort, I think that kind of disposal needs to be addressed so that people that are maybe not as physically able as others will have the ability to get rid of their yard waste in an easier fashion. Thank you.
Mr. Stopper.
Gentleman, Ben Stopper. This assessed fee covers many aspects of our solid waste industry, as I'm sure many of you are aware. One of them I brought up before is the fact that we need to expand the dump and add a new cell. There's been money set aside for years that, from what I understand, should amount to close to $8 million to expand a new cell down there. Now, when they first put this through and their cost assessment on what that would cost to expand that cell is nowhere true in time now as costs go up throughout time. So at this point, people are paying Cal Waste more so that their trash can be shipped out of the county so that our cell does not fill up as quickly as it would have. And these are concerns of people across Calaveras County, and we need to consider the fact that in the near future we need that new cell, and how are we going to bridge that gap and mitigate it so that we can continue to provide these services to our constituents and, you know, ratepayers and everything within Calaveras County. Thank you.
Any further comment? Seeing none, Mr. Krovis, I see you need to address an issue or two, maybe.
Not necessarily. I would make a couple of brief comments on what our citizens have brought forward. Thank you, Ms. Newman. Appreciate your comments. Our current fee structure, again, the one that was established in 1990, established a fee for yard waste or green waste of $4 a cubic yard. The $150 per annual fee for a developed parcel entitles every citizen who pays that fee to dispose of 2 cubic yards of, quote, household waste per week at our transfer stations or our landfill. So that if you're a citizen and you want to bring green waste and you live on an undeveloped parcel, you're in trouble. We don't have that in our code or in our ordinance. If you're a citizen who wants to bring green waste to the transfer stations that accept it and 3 do, or to Rock Creek, we are charging $4 a cubic yard. And that's regardless of whether you're a commercial hauler at Rock Creek or you're a private person using, a residential person using the transfer stations. In terms of the way they're charged, unfortunately, the fee schedule that was in the ordinance in 1991, Ordinance 2510, was never codified. And so it's very difficult for the citizenry to go to our ordinance and say, well, what's legal, what's not legal. It also makes it more difficult for our operator, our contract operator who operates the transfer stations, to be able to convince our citizenry, who in the past have been allowed to bring anything they want at any time, to try to change that so we're actually attempting to recover those disposals or those diversions that are over and above the basic fee. The basic fee is to pay for the operations and maintenance of the transfer stations, the development of the transfer stations, the operation and maintenance of the landfill, our staff that makes it run, and to put money away for the future so that we can continue the closure of the Red Hill landfill and we can have the money for a complete closure of the Rock Creek landfill in addition to the future capital that Mr. Stoppard, I believe, referenced, which is the expansion of the current solid waste cell. Currently, we don't have quite as much money as Mr. Stoppard indicated in our capital account for Rock Creek, but we do have significant funds right now. So the system was set up well, but we need to reevaluate it, not here, but in the near future, to try to get a balance between what we need in the future, what we need to operate today, without making it so expensive that the solid waste or the recyclables end up on the side of the road or in an illegal dump site on private property within the system. So, big picture. Finally, the discussion about Cal Waste, that contract was put into place in September of 2016, and that is for curbside. So that is a service that is over and above the service that's guaranteed in terms of the operation of the landfill and the transfer stations. It's a voluntary service for commercial and residents to hire a company to pick up their curbside material. Everybody gets the option to pick up solid waste, mixed recyclables, and green waste. They're slightly different depending on where one lives. If one lives up above Forest Meadows in elevation, you have one way of dealing with green waste. Below, you have a different way of dealing with green waste. But that agreement was to take the solid waste that was collected in a curbside program and haul it out of county. The purpose of that part of the agreement was to give us the time necessary to complete the studies, to get an actual handle on what it's going to cost us, what we should do, and when we should do it, as well as to accommodate future regulation that's coming around the corner. In 2020, we can't put green waste into the landfill as alternative daily cover and count it, and not count it as solid waste. So that's nearly upon us. So regardless, the item in front of you today is the annual renewal of the fee, and you also, by default, annually renew the fees that were contained in our Ordinance 2510 in 1991. Any other questions?
Okay. I do have a couple of question or comment. In 2010, it was brought to this board an ordinance to charge $25 for at the transfer stations and at the landfill, $25 for appliances, and $4 for green waste per cubic yard.
Okay.
Not per container, per cubic yard. So if somebody brings 20 containers and it adds up to 1 cubic yard, it should be $4. So perhaps if this occurred, the employee that was at the gate didn't understand that or something, maybe we could train those people or have a conversation with them that it is $4 a cubic yard. And that was in 2010. Both of those ordinances were passed.
Okay.
In addition to this, and I think it was brought at the same time this was brought to us also.
Okay.
And it was told to us at that time that just dealing with the appliances that were coming in was taking all this because of the regulations from the state, and especially if they had Freon in them, the cost to get rid of that. So it passed for $25 an appliance and $4 for a cubic yard.
Okay. So, thank you for that history.
And then it's one other comment. It's my understanding in conversations with Cal Waste that yes, they are hauling our refuse to their Galt plant and separating all the recyclables there, but they are shipping some of what's left back to our landfill. It's not being shipped out. They have the possibility or the ability to ship it to another landfill outside of the county, but after they separate it, the solid waste is coming back into our landfill. Is that correct?
That is correct. Part of the issue was that when Cal Waste assumed the two contracts for franchise collection, voluntary franchise collection in the county, there was nothing in the agreement that discussed what we call residuals, so that when a company or an individual at a house is loading all of their recyclables into a single container, wheeling it out to the curb, and it's picked up on a recycling day by a recycling truck, that you're not going to have residuals that are not solid waste and are non-recyclable. In general, that can be a number anywhere from about 11% of the total volume up to about 16 or 17% of the total volume, depending upon the level of education of the resident, of the consumer. And so what we built into the contract with Cal Waste is that we would accept, based on a waste characterization study that they had completed right before we approved the agreement, on 14%, because what that meant is that they cleared out the mixed recycling facility or an area of the mixed recycling facility. They brought in a whole handful of trucks from Calaveras County, dumped it in one area, cleaned out the pathway, sent it through, measured it by weight, and determined that there was 14% residual. The problem was they couldn't bring it back to the landfill because our agreement at the time did not allow any out-of-county waste at our landfill facility. And so they essentially agreed that they would haul it out of county and that we would deal with it in the agreement with Cal Waste. The second thing that I set up in the agreement with Cal Waste is that we would be doing a waste characterization study on a 9-month increment, so that we would be doing it at different times of the year, and we would be averaging that residual. So our first waste characterization study, and I will, if anybody is interested, I know that Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Oliveira, who are on the Solid Waste Task Force, may be very interested in seeing how that waste characterization study will go, but we're trying to schedule it for the September-October timeframe with Cal Waste. And so that is a residual component, and that's why we also have an education component. Thank you for the question.
Mr. Mills?
Yes, my comment's twofold. One is that just so everybody understands, we do get a residual check from Cal Waste from the sale of recyclables, whether that's on a regular basis or as they accumulate, I'm not certain. The other part is that it's interesting because back in 1991, I was running for this board and I spent a lot of time in these chambers as this item was being discussed. It's an interesting discussion that took place prior to its establishment of Ordinance 2510. And I think that if we could go back and understand the reasons that that ordinance was put in place and whether it has morphed or whether it has changed direction or whether it is different in terms of scope than it was originally, I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. Because as we look at it now, we're not talking about a whole lot of dollar changes going back to 1991. That's a long time. So maybe it's something for a future agenda item, but it's something that I think that we need to look at in terms of whether or not this is sustainable at this dollar figure and whether it does meet the goals that we're trying to accomplish with it. But to understand why it was put together back when Red Hill was the dump, and what was used for was primarily they were concerned about the costs of closing Red Hill and maintaining that closure and then reopening a new site. That was all in that discussion back in 1991. So if we can go back and look at that history, I think it would help us to understand whether or not we really are doing what we wanted to do with it or whether we need to have another discussion and a little bit of a change of direction.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. A couple things I want to mention about what you said. You mentioned that Cal Waste pays the county a residual fee. That's not exactly what it is. They pay a series of fees. They pay a franchise fee that's 3% of their gross. They recycle to us 90% of everything that they receive from recycling. Right. And that's a number that's going up and down. If it's aluminum or it's steel, we're okay. If it's big plastic plate jibs or big wheels, it's really bad. And the third part of the fees that we get from Cal Waste is really a vehicle fee. Essentially for their use and demand on the county roads. So they pay an annual fee for every full-time vehicle and then another annual fee for every part-time vehicle they utilize to service the county. So the recycling fee and the franchise fees are new as of last September. And yes, we started receiving income or revenue to the county first quarter of this year. And I've received the second quarter checks last week. And I expect those to kind of creep up in spite of the fact that we have such a volatile market in terms of the value of our diversionable materials. The second thing I wanted to comment on, and I really appreciate your comments on Ordinance 2510 in 1991. Yeah, I think a look is really good. What motivated that, I believe, was the passage of AB 939 in 1989. Where the state indicated to governments, cities and counties, that within 10 to 15 years, there would be a mandatory 50% required diversion of materials that were going to the solid waste facility based upon a certain initiation date. And they also indicated that that number was going to ramp up in 2 decades or a decade and a half. And so 2020 is essentially the 30-year anniversary? Did I do that right? I'm not good with math without a calculator. But the 30th anniversary of AB 939, when we are supposed to have hit 75% diversion for recyclables. We're supposed to have the green waste out of the landfill. We're supposed to have a food waste program where we are collecting any food waste from a producer who's producing more than 4 cubic yards per week. So think hospitals, schools, large restaurants, potentially a large venue that we have in the county, mandatory by state code. So those are all arriving on us in 2 years. So these are some of the changes that we're faced with this system. And yes, the time is long since passed to have these discussions.
It's interesting, too, for those that would be interested, I'm certain Cal Waste would be more than willing to give you a tour of their facility in Galt. I've been there. It is a risk that's on them, not on us, in essence, in terms of the market and the sale of those recyclables. They take that risk in shipping some of these to China. And when they're received in China, if they don't meet a minimum standard, the shipment is returned. And that's on them. They pay that cost outright. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that they're taking care of for us and in getting that diversion done. So it's an important piece of this puzzle of how we're going to meet those goals of a 939.
The highest costs that we have in this industry or this integrated waste management system in the county, one is meeting regulatory compliance, and the second is trucking. Anything we truck, we're starting at about $95 an hour. We try to be efficient by trucking 95 yards of lightweight materials in a single vehicle, because the cost of trucking a 10-wheeler or trucking a 95-yard bottom dump or walking floor is the same. So we try to achieve efficiencies in that expenditure. In terms of the regulatory side, if you had any idea of the number of monitoring, reporting that we do, you'd be surprised. We're spending several $100,000 a year annually on our consultants because they're specialized. The ones that are monitoring the landfill gas, the ones that are monitoring the flare, where we're getting rid of the landfill gas, the ones that are monitoring the water quality underneath the landfill to make sure that we don't have a leak in the liner, because it is a closed cell landfill where water does not penetrate. So, and these things are quite expensive. The leachate pond, where we take the runoff from our active landfill, a leachate pond has an expected replacement value of about $2.5 million. Okay, that's approximately equal to the cost of laying down a liner for a new landfill cell. And so the question is, in our next phase, do we have to move and rebuild the leachate pond, or can we build one or two more phases before we have to move the leachate pond? And that's going to have a big impact on the rate at which we expand and continue the operation of the landfill.
Thank you.
But thank you for this. This is way beyond the discussion I wanted to have.
Sorry. Supervisor Clapp, did you have a comment? Mike, sir.
Yeah, turn it off. I'll address Dennis after we're done. I don't want to waste
Okay. All right. I have a comment and basically an indication of where all these regulations are coming from. In your urban and suburban areas, we're seeing the advances in landfill regulations. I know in the Bay Area, it is mandatory now, residential, that you separate food waste from green waste, from recyclables to household garbage. The public needs to understand that those laws are made on a statewide basis. Unfortunately, we have to abide by those laws. So our regulation of what we're seeing right now is originating back where there's large populations, large operations. Unfortunately, Calaveras County is not in that arena, but we do have to play by those rules. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Any further comment? Any further public comment?
Marty Crane, I just wanted to say, going back to 6 months before the Butte fire broke out, Jason came to our staff, or he took over the environmental department. And a month later, 5 months before the Butte fire started, it was Jeff came as Public Works Director, 5 months before all hell broke loose. And I just want to say that after all this time, watching what Jeff has accomplished in building a team, and he will be the first one to tell you, no, it's the team. It wasn't me, it was the team. What he has accomplished is nothing short of Herculean, and it scares me to death to think where we might be if he hadn't been here. So I just say kudos to Jeff and the team that he's built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not everybody can do it, but composting is an alternative to the garbage. If people don't have, what do you call that thing that grinds up your food in the sink? Yeah, disposal. If you don't have that, then you can put that in a compost pile and use your leaves and different things to compost it. And if you go down to the fisherman's store, you can get some worms and dump them in, and they can help out with it. And it's kind of fun. I do it, and my garbage doesn't stink.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. What we're hearing with all the abatements of marijuana is that there are dump trucks, long lines of them heading out to the landfill, and that the abated plants are being buried in our landfill, covered up with garbage and in dirt. Is that cost being kept track of to go back against the property owner after they've been to cannabis court and all that kind of stuff, where all the costs get assessed against the property? Or is the county just going out there, it's just like a cousin deal where the sheriff goes out with a couple dump truck loads of pot and dumps it in the landfill? So is that being back billed so that cost can be recovered?
Thank you. Mr. Crovus, do you have any information on that issue? And then I'm going to ask County Council.
I could only answer a piece of it. Yes, it indeed, the landfill has been accepting eradicated marijuana plants on delivery. They arrive with previous notice, they arrive with the sheriff in tow, and in general, we prepare a spot at the landfill so that we dump immediately into a hole and bury immediately. We've been tracking those costs and forwarding those costs up for recovery. But that's as far as I can speak to. I don't know the other side of this particular equation.
Okay. County Council, is there any comment you wish to make on this issue, or, okay?
If I may, I might add.
Go right ahead, CEO.
Mr. Krovitz and I had talked about that too after we were utilizing the landfills. And he's right where we're trying to capture those staff costs. One cost that I would say, and I correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Krovitz, but I think where we're not necessarily covering that, will have to be looked at is depending on the quantity of marijuana we're putting in there, it does impact the cell life for our cells that didn't necessarily account for putting that into there. And that cost that's a hard one to quantify, and it's something that we'd have to be looking at, but certainly it does impact the cell life of the landfill.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Boy, that throws a question.
Supervisor Mills, go right ahead.
Thank you. Green waste diversion. Does this offset or go against us in terms of our green waste diversion goals?
All right on the spot again, huh, Ms. Crovitz?
Sorry, I just popped into my head.
It's a very good question, but it's I'm trying to think. It's putting a teaspoon in the ocean. Really, we're probably running in excess of, I don't know, 500,000 tons per year of green waste within our system, and that doesn't compare at all to, a week's worth of roll-offs, 40-yard roll-offs that are full. And the only comment I can make in terms of the cell life is this stuff is compacted. It compacts down very well, very quickly. So while you might start with a 10-yard dump truck full of eradicated marijuana, the amount of space it takes up in the landfill cell is very, very nominal compared to what we're bringing in per day. We're bringing in approximately 80 to 85 tons a day is what we bring into our landfill, and that is approximately 361 or 2 days per year.
Yeah, Ms. Crovitz, not so quick.
You don't.
By 3 minutes.
You don't.
I know.
You don't grind it and use it as cover.
Not the eradicated marijuana.
Compared to pine needles, and I have to be very specific in my district and Supervisor Garamendi's district, How does that compare to the compaction factor and the space? Because we're going to be looking at different ways when 2020 comes around, how to dispose of our pine needles in the District 3 and District Supervisor Garamendi's. Just burn them?
Well, you can burn them, but all of you, and I know all of you have run a burn pile at your homes, know that if you try to run a burn pile with pine needles, it doesn't go very well. If you don't have other cellulose material, other branches, tree limbs, maybe partially rotted stumps to go along with it, you don't generate enough heat to burn the pine needles. Pine needles tend to be, depending on the year, tend to be annually anywhere from 30 to 60% of that green waste stream. And they have their own requirements. Pine needles has its own requirements. They're high in acid, so one must be careful about what one does with them. You can't just take pine needles and drop it on a meadow because you could prevent your native grasses from growing through. We've probably experienced that before. So green waste, we can have a lot of discussions, a lot of fun on green waste. Let's not deal with that here unless you have a specific question.
I think we pretty much beat that bush to death. Any further comments by the board of Mr. Krovis? Any further public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Tofinelli. Second. Second by Supervisor Mills. Any further public comment? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk?
Item 22 is from Public Works. Adopt a mitigated negative declaration for Single Tree Drive Low Water Crossing Conversion Project.
Mr. Krovis.
Public Works, here we go again. This is part of the Highway Bridge Program. Was an existing low water crossing, got washed out in some storms. The road was closed in the Diamond 20 Ranch Estates subdivision. It was eligible under Highway Bridge Program as being part of the National Highway System for funding. The project is essentially 100% funded with the exception of some of our permitting fees for environmental. So this item in front of you is essentially to adopt a mitigated negative declaration under CEQA for this project. The NEPA portion of this project has been prepared and adopted by Caltrans under authority by Federal Highway Administration. So there is I don't know if anyone had a chance to look, but there is a pretty good list of mitigation and monitoring that will be required immediately preceding and during and immediately after construction, because we are building over a waterway. And I also want to note that this is going to be one of the last low water crossing conversions to a bridge in the state. Calaveras County has currently in our program 3. And the program eliminated the ability to take a low water crossing and bring it to a bridge in October of 2016. So these things that were programmed back in 2010 or 2011 are some of the last to go through. Questions?
Jeff?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Supervisor.
My apologies. Jeff, do you feel that CSA 4 will have to put some matching funds towards that mitigation cost?
There is.
Are they aware of that?
It's a percentage. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
Could we just shoot them an email so they know, and probably in what time frames they're looking, so they can be sure it's accounted for in their financial?
Yeah, and I don't know what agreement was set with CSA, the CSA at the time the project was initially brought forward. I know that there is a contribution out of the CSA road fund towards this project, but I don't know if that contribution was fixed to the project approval and environmental document and not part of construction. The environmental mitigation and monitoring is part of construction. So I will I will do that, and we'll reach back out to them. So thank you for the reminder.
Okay, and you're figuring the timeline on this, and I know Stagecoach will be construction 2018, from what I'm seeing, late 2018.
No, early 2018.
Early 2018, but we'll have it done before the end of the year, pending storms.
We're going to attempt to do this in a single construction season. We have what's called a limited operating period due to environmental constraints. As you know, there is an active waterway under there that goes through a series of man-made diversions. And there's also been, we're blessed with our endangered species and our listed species, and we also are blessed with some very active beavers that have done a lot of work creating a little mini lake at this crossing, and that was part of what caused the washout in the first place.
I've had long conversations with people over those beavers there.
So beavers are not protected, but they have the ability to move upstream or downstream.
So the question would be, what kind of time frame would we be looking at for the construction of Single Tree? Are we in 2020 or 2021?
No, we're hoping to advertise it starting early 2018 so that we can award it. Our construction window begins officially on April 15th.
So you're figuring you may have this bridge in place by the end of 2018?
That would be the hope, because we have to stop significant ground disturbing activity by the beginning of October.
And it is a safety issue in that area. As you know, last year we lost a house because an out-of-county resource couldn't get across a bridge that they thought was there. So it needs to be a priority to get this reestablished. It is an area that there's only one way in, one way out right now.
Well,
so that would be an excellent move to get it done.
That CSA is going to be blessed with two pending projects.
Yeah, I'll be meeting with them next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I will double check on the funding. And I'm not certain if Stagecoach or Single Tree was the one where there was contribution, or if both. So I'll double check that.
Yeah, Mr. Grovis, I have one comment. I see that this situation developed in 2004 per our staff our packet here.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's 2018, and we're looking and remedying this. I have a couple of situations in my day. Are we looking at that kind of timeline also?
For the storm damage, the recent storm damage?
Yes.
No, I don't think that's.
Yeah. Okay, that's good enough, sir.
Okay. The level of responsibility for this type of project versus a storm damage type of project, as long as it doesn't involve significant improvements or significant mitigation, can go along fairly quickly.
Okay.
But it doesn't absolve us under storm damage or actually under any disaster damage. We must do, if we can't get the project repaired within 6 months, we must do archaeological resources and endangered species, no matter what. If we can get it repaired within 6 months, we can do those after the fact. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Further questions of Mr. Grovis? Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
So moved, Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Tofinelli. No further public comment. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0 unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 23 is from Public Works to approve the request for relief of liability in the amount of $157. A deposit made on July 21st, 2017 from the Rock Creek Solid Waste Facility did not match the receipts that were submitted and exceeds staff authority.
I'm sorry to have to bring this in front of you for $157. We were in front of you for $26 not too long ago. The fact is that the transfer stations in Rock Creek are cash handling facilities. They shouldn't be. We should treat solid waste coming into our facilities as a utility. We should bill it. That's a system that's got to be put in place. When we have cash receipts from all over the county and they are picked up by our contractor, brought to Public Works in San Andreas, and then taken to the bank and deposited, there's going to be errors. It was a cash accounting problem that we have, and we periodically have them. Less $25 or less, we can deal with it, but when it goes above $25, we need board approval.
Questions of Mr. Crovus?
Yes, sir. On page 382 of our agenda packet, it refers to the statement, "This shortage has been thoroughly investigated. The circumstances surrounding the loss are set forth in the detail in the attached statement of explanation," and there is no attached statement of explanation. I did bring this up to the CAO. I just felt that if we're going to make that kind of statement, that we should likewise have an attachment with the agenda package.
I'm sorry, I changed the process so that my notebook is what you have on your screen. This item ends, I think, for me, on page 376. And page 380.
Yeah, this would be your request for relief of liability.
Okay, I don't.
Form. It's the form itself. I mean, if we're not going to provide an attached statement of explanation, simply remove that from the form. That's all it would need. Yours is different? No, it's right there. It's the second paragraph. Yeah. Okay.
So you're looking for
to either have an attached statement of explanation or remove the statement from the request for relief form. Yeah, CAO Lutz.
If I could add,
CAO Lutz, I just promoted you.
It happens occasionally. Typically with those type of release, we include a memo from the department and the individual where the money was lost, describing what the situation was. It's been a little while since I reviewed that one to remember, but certainly when it went over to the auditor's office for approval on the discharge, there should have been that attached memo. That's what I think that's referencing.
Okay.
Because that would have been the documentation that went initially to the auditor's office.
Okay. So thank you. We will provide these in the future. Do you need to see the background on this one?
Not at this time. It's a process issue is all.
Okay.
Any further, Mr. Crovus?
That's it.
Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, any questions further or discussion by the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Mills, second by Supervisor Tofinelli. No further public comment. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 24 is from Public Works to adopt a resolution approving a temporary loan of $384,432.57 from the General Fund number 1010 to the Transit Services Fund number 1021 to meet transit operating expenses during fiscal year 2016-17, requiring 4/5 board approval.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be breaking at 12 o'clock. That gives us approximately 15 minutes to hear this agenda item. I am inclined to proceed, but it may take longer than 15 minutes, just so everybody's aware of that. Okay, Mr. Crovus.
Okay, this is the second time in 2 years that we've brought to the board a request to get a loan from the general fund to fund last year's operating expenses for transit. Transit is operated on designated funds that come through different routing from different organizations. We are funded from the federal government through Caltrans. We're funded through state government through COG. We have designated funds that are direct to Cal OES. They all must be processed. They must be processed early. As of June 30th of 2017, we were in arrears of what was expended in terms of what was received as revenues of approximately $384,000 for the year. At that time, we had receivables in excess, or in slight excess of that amount, but if they're not received before the end of June, they are not part of that fund. They come in and are received in 2017. So that necessitated the loan. Since the 30th of June, we have received a number of these, which has lowered the request from $284,000 down to $237,000, and we still have receivables in excess of the remainder, but they haven't yet been processed. And what I mean by that is we've made claims through COG earlier in the year. They pay when they receive their funds. Their funds were received late. We've had a break in COG, regular COG meetings, so I expect this to be processed if they have a meeting in September. If not, that will be processed at their meeting in October. And that is approximately $120,000 of the outstanding $230,000. Our federal claims were late, and to avoid this situation, last year we started doing our claims in December of 2016, and that was not good enough. This year we started our claims earlier, and we put in our first claim on August 9th for fiscal year 17-18 in the amount of $580,000, approximately half of our operating and maintenance budget for the fiscal year. We are doing what we can to try to get in front of this issue, and so that we don't come back here with our hands out asking for a loan, because it's not good for you, it's not good for us, and the transit fund must pay interest on anything we borrow. And interest is not recoverable in any of these grant programs. So I'll take questions.
Any questions or discussion by the board?
Mr. Kovitz, we're going to still be on track to have a zero balance at the end of the fiscal year for this when these books are washed. In other words, when we get to the end of the book the cycle.
I'm not certain I understand your question, but I don't think that we will show that we're at zero balance in the 2016-17 fiscal year. We'll always show a negative balance, but we'll show a commensurate overage for 2017-18. That then repays the general fund for what was loaned, so that we came up with a zero balance.
My apologies for phrasing the question the way I did, but that's the point is that we will be evened up if we were looking at it in the larger sphere of what is bled over into the 17-18 year.
That is correct.
Okay.
Further comments by the board? Seeing none.
I do have a comment.
I'm sorry.
Question. Jeff, I'm trying to understand what you were speaking of and what you said and what's in our packet here. And it says that there was $384,000, and that of the $384,000, you've already received $142,000.
After June 30th.
After June 30th. So are you asking for the 384, or are you asking for 241 because you've already received 142?
Kelly Zanhires, our Deputy Director, Operations and Maintenance, Public Works.
So because the money was received after June 30th, we're not allowed to apply it to the previous year. So we need to take a temporary loan, and then as soon as that loan gets processed, that $142,000 will immediately be repaid.
All right.
So it's
That makes
just a
sense.
housekeeping issue.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, we'll have the money.
Further questions? Seeing none, we'll open it to public comment.
I had a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did have one question that goes back to Supervisor Mills's question. Maybe I misunderstood a piece of what you were saying. The expectation, obviously, at some point, if we're taking out the short-term loan, we're taking that out in anticipation of revenue that was earned for those expenditures. That would be an accurate statement?
Yes.
The question that I have, what you made a comment that gave me some concern, is you were taking money from this fiscal year, 17-18, and applying it into last year's dollars to basically clear out that loan. Is that what you meant to say, or is that a misstatement?
That's a misstatement, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. That had my...
So just so I'm clear, because I brought the other question, does that mean that we are paying for work? We got paid, this work was done in 16-17. The check came in 17-18. So that's what we're doing. We're not.
Yes, we're trying to recognize revenue when it was earned in the prior fiscal year.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Lutz, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, one more question. Why are we, so we're settling up with the books. I get that. Why is this not part of the final agenda item?
I think it was put in separate because we've been developing this to do this closeout for much longer than when we got to the closeout piece, knowing that we had a structural problem. In retrospect, it absolutely could have been rolled into it because it is another piece of closing items.
Okay.
So the $500,000 that Mr. Krovitz was speaking of was just to demonstrate that we've already made claims for fiscal year 17-18 in a way to get ahead of, so that we're not at a deficit at the end of next fiscal year. We're making structural changes to improve the operation. So he was assuring you of that.
Yeah, is that your program, or are you responsible for that?
I am responsible.
Immediate supervision of that program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess that's a good way to put it.
Thank you, C.A. Lutz, for your explanation. It keeps me from talking to you offline about it. So thank you.
Further questions of Mr. Krovis? No further comment? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McManus, you raised up. Would you like to make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Stopper. Uh-oh, he's got his computer.
Well, I got to be able to read it to get it right, you know? Don't want to stumble and say something needs to be washed. Financing part of this. Board authorization is requested for the temporary loan in the amount of $384,402.57 from the General Fund 1010 and to the Transit Service Fund 1021 to provide a short-term loan to cover transit operating costs in fiscal year 16-17. Staff expects the entire loan amount of $384,432.57 will be received by the end of September 2017. Of the $384,000, I'm just going to skip the exact numbers real quick. Transit has already received, leaving a balance of another $241,000 yet to be received. Following the receipt of these payments, the general fund will be reimbursed to the full plus interest at the pool money rate. What's the interest? If COG does not approve the location of staff, and I'm not going to go over all these acronyms, and Caltrans does not provide reimbursement for the FTA programs, the general fund will be responsible for the unfunded transit costs and loan will become a general fund contribution to transit. 1010 is a broad general fund number. What is that coming out of the excise taxes line item? Where's this loan coming from? Where are the full terms of this loan? This is definitely something we need to do to properly finance public works as they move forward. So in no way am I arguing about this. I just want clarity on it. Interest, which line item is it coming from? Is it excise tax? What's the interest rate? Will further down the road, how many more departments are going to ask for this type of loan and disbursement? Thank you, gentlemen.
Our CAO Lutz.
That's a really good question because I think it does bear clarification. There are two types, when we refer to general funds, there are really two types that we're talking about. That's our operating budget. When we, within the fiscal year, make technical adjustments, we're moving money from within what is appropriated within the general fund from one unit to another. We have the county, and that's the treasurer's duties, is to maintain the county's investment pool. And that's a pool of cash that obviously is well beyond our annual operating budget of general fund use. So it's that pool of cash that really is what we're talking about here. This is a loan from our treasury pool of non-discretionary revenues that we can use for non-discretionary purposes. So it's a general fund, but it's not something that's in our current budget. So the reason we pay interest on it, are you timing me? I'm done. So the reason we pay interest on it is it's basically an opportunity lost that if it were within the normal investment pool that the treasurer has invested with our with the other securities, instead being used to backfill revenue that we're anticipating. That's why there's an interest charge to it. Does that help kind of clarify the differentiation? Okay.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Bill McManus. It seems like for all the years that I've been following public transit, there's always a problem. There always has to be an infusion of money. There's always bad ideas that are tried that remain to be bad ideas, and they have bad results. We've heard recently that public transit cannot make their 10% fare box recovery. I think we still have routes in this county where it costs $71 per person each way from San Andreas to West Point. At what point do we stop the bleeding on public transit? And now they seem to be operating like this. The county is one of those payday loan kind of operations where give us the money that we didn't have last year. We promise to give it to you next year. But is there any hope that they're going to have more money next year because they didn't make enough last year? And I guess my final question is there any compelling reason, is there any law, is there any direction that we have to have public transit, and at what cost? Or do we start scaling back on public transit to the more profitable routes, even though it wouldn't be as convenient, it wouldn't cost so much money because it seems to be kind of a black hole for providing services. I've been on public transit. I use it once in a while. It's a lonely trip. I'm usually the only one on the bus. And we have big buses. So maybe this whole thing needs to be refigured and looked at again to see what's the true cost, what's the true need, and is there a better way of providing it? For that service going up to West Point, actually, you'd be better off hiring a cab or just buying a limousine and picking up a few people and giving them a ride. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Supervisor Mills? Okay. I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Supervisor Garamendi, who forgot to turn on his mic. No further public comment? All in favor indicate by, I'm sorry, Mr. Fry, did you want to speak to this? No. Okay. I'm just eyes like an eagle here.
Just adjusting myself in my chair.
Okay. I would, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Madam Clerk, we made our deadline of 12:15 or 12 o'clock.
So we will reconvene at 2?
We're going to reconvene at 2.